I'm Shada Islam. I'm a founder and managing director of New Horizons Project. I'm also senior policy advisor to the European Policy Center, and I teach Asia-Europe relations as a visiting professor at the College of Europe in Natolin. ASEAN, for me, has been central to the Asia-Europe story. You can't talk about this relationship without looking at this 45-year-old history of EU-ASEAN relations. It ran into many obstacles on the way. The understanding of each other at that point in history was not as strong as it is now. It was a different world. People didn't talk so much about similarities. We were talking quite a lot at each other rather than to each other. It was a very different time from what it is now. The European Union was smaller, fewer countries. ASEAN was also smaller, fewer countries. And though there was an interest in each other, I would say there wasn't really a deep understanding of what we were. The European Union seemed to think that ASEAN should be a mirror image of itself. ASEAN often complained of being treated as a junior partner in this relationship. That was then. The last 15 years have seen a step change, a really very fundamental shift in mutual perceptions of each other from ASEAN of the EU of ASEAN. There's been a growing, I would say, understanding of each other, of two very different animals, two very different entities, which do have the same kind of goal of intergovernmental cooperation, collective association, but doing it in very different ways. And I think it required a certain degree of maturity and hard work by some very important people to get that understanding through. So the European Union became, I would say, more humble, more willing to listen, and more accepting that the world is different from ourselves here in Europe. And ASEAN recognized, became more confident also, had some very good leaders, and became more confident in its geopolitical outreach. And there was less hesitancy in this relationship to talk about the differences on questions like human rights. For instance, that's always been a big issue. So strategic partnership takes the relationship between EU and ASEAN to a new level, which is frankly strategic, not transactional. It's not you do this for me and I do that for you. It's not just about trade or the economy, or not just about investments, which are crucial to Europe-ASEAN relations. But it's not just about buying and selling to each other, investing in each other. It's about talking about the wider geopolitical, geostrategic, geoeconomic challenges. It's about talking about the elephants in the room, talking about China, talking about the United States and how their policies and their competition and their rivalry impact both on Europe, the European Union, and the impact on ASEAN. And I think both sides agree that they will not be taking part in this binary competition and not choosing camps. When the two adopted their Indo-Pacific strategies, the European Union really waited, that strategic partnership, in a sense, waited for ASEAN to come out with its Indo-Pacific outlook, and then really took inspiration from that document and talked about an inclusive Indo-Pacific. Civil society participation in policymaking is essential if those policies are to work, if those policies are to be in the interest of people. So many of these conversations that we're having now within EU and ASEAN, or within ASEM, actually are inspired by think tanks, academia, journalists, trade union leaders, parliamentarians, all of them coming in with their own ideas about accountability, about transparency, about democracy, about pluralism, diversity, inclusion. These are terms that have been brought into our very important conversations on economy and politics by civil society actors. Today's thought leaders, young people are not just for the future, they're really doing it now. Look, the whole issue of climate change, environmental degradation, the need to protect our forests, our biodiversity, these questions are so much on the minds of young people because they are seeing the consequences of pollution on their health, on the parents' health. So I think questions to do with society, with the environment, with our digital future, our protection of our data, these are questions that young people are very, very concerned about. That's why the last 5 or 6 years in this EU-ASEAN relationship have been so dynamic, so energizing, so vibrant. It's because civil society is very much part of the discussion.